you're going to have to determine today, which is the front of the heart from the back of the heart. Now the reason this is so hard to do is because when they're packaged, you have about 10 hearts, maybe even 15 in a bag, and they suck all the air out of the bag. So when they do that, some of the hearts get a little misshapen. So you have to look for features on the heart's surface to determine which side's the front and which side's the back. Okay? So this line right here, labeled number 7, that's going to be key to figuring out that this is the anterior side. You have this big mark that runs all the way down the front. Okay? On the back side of the heart, you have a line also, but it runs straight down. There's a third line that runs kind of like this one, but it's a little bit shorter. Okay, so this one, again, one area to the next. It's the bigger of the two lines that goes diagonally. The back you can tell because it has this straight line going down it. Also, if you look right here, you can see that there's a crease in the back of the heart. Right through here, there's a crease. Okay, that's another way you can tell that it's the posterior or back side of the heart. Now, there are a handful of structures that you're going to need to identify externally, including some of the vessels. Now, I want you to do your best to identify these, and I'll give you ways that you can do that as we go through the internal anatomy. But these 3 that I'm going to point out right now are very, very difficult to find. And if you were given a heart externally like this, I would not anticipate that you can identify them. Okay? Just because you really do need to see like where, like which ventricle they're going into, for example. So I don't want you to worry about knowing the aorta or the superior or inferior vena cava. The inferior vena cava we can actually see very, very nicely, but the reason I'm crossing that one off is because we identify it in the same place that we identify the coronary sinus, and one of them had to go. So I just picked this one since it's superior and inferior vena cava are in the same little box, so it's kind of an easier one. But you will need to know, so the 2 vessels you are responsible for knowing are the coronary sinus and the pulmonary trunk. Now the pulmonary trunk, looking externally, is very easy to see because it is the most anterior vessel. So if you figure out which side is the front, the vessel that is also in the front, or the most anterior, will be the pulmonary trunk. Okay? Just so you know, behind that we have the aorta. So the aorta would be next in line to that. But again, I'm not going to emphasize that one as much because it is a lot harder to identify. But do go ahead and identify these for the sake of increasing your knowledge so that you can do better on the models, because you will still need to know that on the models. Okay, so other external structures you need to know are the ventricles. So when we look at the posterior, the ventricles line up pretty nicely with these musculatures here. So if we have a pin on this musculature below the thigh line right here, that would be left ventricle. Again, we're looking at the anterior side, so this would be the left side. And up here would be the right. Now in the posterior view, we have this line that goes right down the middle, so this is actually an even better differentiation, but you should know it from both sides. Here, if we're looking at it, it would be the right ventricle on this side and the left ventricle on this side. So now you see why it's important to know the front from the back, right? Because if we just give you a single hemisphere, you need to be able to identify whether it's the front or the back so that you can identify the ventricles correctly. All right, now for the auricles, looking at the anterior side of the heart, the auricle would be, there's one right here that sits just on top and one that sits kind of on the side. This is our right auricle. This is the left auricle. They kind of look like salami, just saying. All right, so that's how you'll be able to see them. They're kind of a darker, meaty color, and they have white specks in them, just like salami. If we're going to show you the atrium, we're going to pin just below. So the right atrium would be pinned somewhere in this region, left atrium somewhere in this region. Again, if we pin the auricle, we would not be asking for the atrium that lies beneath it. We'd be asking for the auricle. Okay? If we're asking for the atrium, we'll specifically not pin the auricle so that there is no confusion of what we're asking for. Now looking at the posterior side, we would have the left atrium here above the crease. Well, above or below, but basically in the fatty region near the crease. And then here you can see the right auricle. So again, we wouldn't put the pin there. If we were asking for the atrium, we'd put it below it. All right, another thing that you'll need to know on the posterior side is the coronary sinus. That's where this is going through, okay? When you look at the PSU website, if you want to use this as a resource, you'll note that this is actually going through the inferior vena cava, but because we also identify the coronary sinus here, we're going to just call this coronary sinus. Okay, so if you see a hole there, that's why, so don't be confused by that. You also kind of see there's a little triangle here, so it's like smack dab in the middle. Just follow this line all the way up, and that'll be the coronary sinus. Okay, you may or may not have the hole here. One more thing before I move on to the other ones below, or the interior view, we have the apex, which is just the base of the heart here, and anterior view, again, just the point of the heart. Okay, any questions before we go to the internal structures?